It all started when I got a membership at the city's new gym. I usually went to the gym at night when it was less crowded. It was the month of December, and after evening hours, the gym would be almost empty. One night, I was on the treadmill, completely lost in my own thoughts, when I noticed something strange. There was a man, I had never seen him there before, who kept walking in circles in the weightlifting section, in the exact same spot. His face was turned towards the wall, and he was making some odd, almost disturbing movements. I thought maybe it was some new type of warm-up exercise, so I ignored it. The next night, that same man was there again. This time he stood facing the wall, perfectly still, and after a while, he slowly raised his hands, as if he were lifting some invisible weight. Then he gently lowered them again. All of this, without touching a single piece of equipment. I watched him for a while, my curiosity slowly mixing with an unsettling sense of discomfort, and then I forced myself to focus back on my training. But deep inside me, an indescribable anxiety was beginning to grow like a creeping shadow. After that, it became a daily routine. That man, with an average height and always wearing dark clothes, would show up every night at the same time, in the exact same spot, repeating those eerie, bizarre movements. Sometimes he would just stand there, completely still. Sometimes he would look down at the floor. Other times, he would slowly tilt his head from side to side. But the most terrifying part, he never, ever used any machines. He never spoke to anyone. He would simply come in, perform those strange, ghostly movements, and then vanish as quietly as he had arrived. A few others in the gym seemed to either ignore him or perhaps never even noticed him. Maybe they thought he was just some harmless, odd guy. But I couldn't ignore him. I simply couldn't. My sleep started to suffer. Before going to the gym, I would find myself dreading, will he be there tonight? Will he stand again with his face towards the wall? Even when I was on the treadmill, my eyes would constantly dart towards him. My performance started to plummet. I couldn't concentrate. I kept feeling like he was watching me, even though his face always pointed toward the wall. It was as if my own mind was caving in on itself, slowly eating me alive. One day, I finally gathered the courage to ask the receptionist, "Do you know that guy who comes at night and just does those weird movements in one place?" She stared at me blankly. "Who? I don't recall anyone like that." My heart began to pound violently in my chest. Was I going crazy? Was he just a figment of my imagination? But I had seen him with my own eyes. I knew I had. That night, I went to the gym again. The very first thing I did was look at that spot where he always stood. He wasn't there. I let out a sigh of relief. I focused on my training, and for the first time in days, it felt like a heavy weight had been lifted off me. I was feeling good. I even managed to hit my best set that night. But as I turned to head towards the lockers, I caught something in the mirror's reflection. That man, he was standing right behind me. His face was visible in the mirror, and he was staring directly at me. His eyes, they were empty, hollow, like there was no life inside them. And on his lips, there was a faint smile, but it wasn't comforting. It was chilling. Then slowly he raised his finger to his lips, a quiet, deliberate gesture. Shh. I froze. My heart thundered in my chest so hard I thought it might burst. I whipped around instantly, but there was no one there. After that night, I stopped going to the gym. I don't know who he was, what he wanted, or whether he was even real or just a creation of my own unraveling mind. But since that day, every time I pass by a gym, those hollow eyes, that silent gesture, they come rushing back into my memory, sending a cold shiver racing through my entire body. That fear, it still lives with me. I used to work the night shift at a 24-hour gym. It was in a quiet part of the city, and late at night, it would become absolutely silent. My shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6 a.m. I actually liked this shift in a way because very few people came, which meant less crowds, less noise, and most of the time I was alone, which gave me peace, calm, reflective. But in that very solitude, a strange fear was also hidden, especially when the gym's large windows looked out onto the dark streets outside. Slight unease. That night, everything was normal. I was sitting at the counter doing my university assignments. Occasionally I would look up and glance at the large, empty gym. Rows of machines stood in the darkness like giant skeletons, eerie, watchful. It was almost 2 a.m. and there was no one in the gym. I thought that probably no one would come until morning, and I sighed in relief, getting engrossed in my work. Contentment, then a subtle shift to a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a faint sound came from the back of the gym. Sudden alertness, a hint of surprise. The area where the strength training equipment and free weights were kept. I immediately put down my pencil and listened. Intense focus, growing suspense. The silence in the gym was so profound that you could hear a pin drop. Heightened tension. I felt as if someone had placed a weight on the ground. I checked my watch. It was 2:15. I thought maybe a customer had arrived whom I missed, or perhaps I was deep in thought and didn't hear the gate bell. Puzzled, trying to rationalize, I got up from the counter and looked towards the back. It was dark, and the machines seemed to be piled on top of each other. Cautious, a sense of dread forming. I called out, "Hello, is anyone there?" Hesitant, yet trying to sound firm. My voice echoed through the empty gym and came back to me. No answer. I waited a few seconds, then called out again. "Is there a customer? The gym is about to close if you haven't checked in yet." A bit more assertive with a hint of strategy. I deliberately said "about to close" to coax anyone hiding to come out. Calculating, a slight tremor of fear. Then the same sound came again, this time clearer, like something heavy being slowly dragged across the floor. Alarmed, heart pounding. My heart started beating rapidly. I knew no customer would make such a movement at this hour, and if there was one, they would surely answer me. Panicked, realization dawning, I turned on my mobile's flashlight and moved towards the back, determined yet trembling. As I approached the weight section, the dragging sound stopped. Complete silence. Tense, holding breath. I swept my flashlight around. The machines were in their places and no one was visible. I looked everywhere, every corner, even checked the doors to the bathrooms and storage rooms, all empty. Confused, a mix of relief and lingering doubt. I thought maybe it was my imagination, or perhaps I had heard something due to lack of sleep. Trying to convince myself, a sigh of partial relief. I took a deep breath and turned to go back. As soon as I turned, I heard another sound behind me, this time someone sobbing. Immediate terror, a gasp of disbelief. I immediately spun around and shined my flashlight in that direction again. Desperate, heart racing, the light fell directly on a dumbbell rack. A shadow appeared behind the rack. Chilling, a slow dawning of horror. My throat went dry and I took a step back, frozen in fear, a shiver down the spine. I focused my flashlight on the shadow and slowly it began to become clear, building suspense, a morbid curiosity. A man was lying on the ground, his hands and feet bound. His mouth was covered with a cloth, and fear was clearly visible in his eyes. Shock, sympathy, a surge of adrenaline. He was sobbing, and seeing me, a glimmer of hope appeared in his eyes. A mix of empathy and urgent need to act. I understood that this was not a normal situation. I was still standing in my place, 1,000 thoughts racing through my mind. Overwhelmed, a jumble of questions and fear. Who could this be? How did he get here? And who tied him up? Frantic questioning, a desperate need for answers. Suddenly I heard another sound from the gym's main gate. Another jolt of fear, even more intense. I quickly turned off my flashlight and hid behind the nearest machine. My breathing became rapid, hyperventilating, absolute terror. A little later, I heard the door open and close. Then soft footsteps felt like they were entering the gym. Every sound magnified, dread creeping in. I was peeking through a small hole where I could see the counter area. A tall, thin man was entering the gym. He had a long stick in his hand. His face was covered with a mask, but his eyes looked terrifying. Horror, absolute terror, a feeling of helplessness. He was looking everywhere, as if searching for something. Prey in the crosshairs, a sense of being hunted. The man was slowly moving towards my hiding place. Impending doom, heart in throat. I wondered what to do now. If he sees me, I'm done for. Desperate thoughts, no escape. I had no way to escape either. I clenched my fists and prayed. Utter desperation, a plea for survival. The man finally reached the spot where the bound person was lying. He looked at him and mumbled something I couldn't understand. Confusion mixed with terror, trying to make sense of the incomprehensible. Then he started dragging the bound person, and I understood that was the dragging sound I had heard earlier. He was trying to take him outside. Realization. A renewed surge of urgency and fear for the victim. I gathered my courage and thought I had to do something. If I didn't help now, that person might lose their life. A sudden surge of bravery, a strong sense of responsibility despite the fear. I put my mobile on silent and tried to call the police, but my hand was trembling and I couldn't dial the correct number. Frustration, physical manifestation of fear. As the man was moving towards the main gate with the bound person, I suddenly let out a loud scream. A desperate, adrenaline-fueled act, a raw cry for help. Police! A powerful, defiant shout. The man immediately flinched, dropped the bound person and started looking at me. His eyes gleamed with anger. A moment of triumph mixed with renewed terror as the predator turns his attention. I immediately came out of my hiding place and ran towards the gym's exit. The man came after me. A frantic escape, pure survival instinct kicking in. I ran at full speed out of the gym and onto the street. Fortunately, I heard the siren of a police car in the distance. A wave of relief, a surge of hope. Perhaps someone had seen me or sensed the strange situation and reported it to the police. Gratefulness, a feeling of being saved. Upon hearing the siren, the man panicked. He looked at me one last time and then disappeared into the darkness. The escape, the immediate danger receding. The police car arrived in a few minutes, and I told them the whole story. The police surrounded the gym and rescued the bound person from inside. Resolution, the immediate crisis averted. Later, it was learned that the person was a local businessman who had been kidnapped for ransom. The kidnapper was trying to move him from here to another location to avoid suspicion. Understanding the gravity of the situation, the chilling reality. If I hadn't seen him and called out, that person might not be alive today. Profound realization of impact, a deep sense of purpose. After that day, I stopped working the night shift. That solitude that I once liked now reminded me of a human wolf, a permanent shift in perspective, lingering trauma. I learned that the greatest fear is not the supernatural, but the evil hidden in the hearts of men, and darkness gives refuge to that evil. A somber, profound realization, a lasting lesson. I was never serious about my health in my 22 years of life. The increasing weight and my growing disgust with myself were eating me alive from the inside. I finally decided to join a new popular gym in Los Angeles called Fit Zone. I had no idea. This decision would become the most terrifying turning point of my life. When I entered the gym, I was struck by the dazzling shine of modern machines everywhere. I met a trainer named Jackson, a man with a perfectly sculpted body and a strange, intense sparkle in his eyes. He seemed extremely professional, almost too perfect. The first few weeks of Jackson's training were like stepping into a whole new world. He didn't just guide my workouts, he tracked every tiny detail about my diet, my sleep, and my entire lifestyle. My physical transformation became Jackson's obsession. He clicked my pictures every day, measured my muscles constantly, and celebrated every small success like it was some grand achievement. At first, all this felt so motivating, so empowering, but slowly, Jackson's behavior began to feel too much. The tightening grip, when freedom became a distant dream. Jackson started interfering in every corner of my life. Once at a party, when I grabbed a slice of pizza, he scolded me. He monitored my social life, always suggesting fitness-related activities no matter the situation. It was suffocating, but I told myself this was just part of my commitment. Within 3 months, I had become a lean, fit, and agile person. I had finally achieved the fitness I always dreamed of, and I genuinely started feeling good about myself. When I told Jackson I wanted to end the sessions and continue working out on my own, his face twisted, disapproval, panic, and something darker flashed across it. He tried so hard to convince me to stay, offering me free sessions, sweet-talking me, almost begging, but I refused. I didn't know. I had just awakened a monster. Shadows pursuit, everywhere, every moment. From that day, my life spiraled into something I could never have imagined. First came the constant messages, all trying to pressure me to return. "You're wasting your hard work, Alex. Come back before you ruin everything." I ignored them. Then came the non-stop phone calls. Jackson would call me several times a day. I blocked his number, but he started calling from other numbers. I began to feel like I was being watched. I stopped answering calls, but the messages never stopped. "I'm watching you, Alex." One night, I noticed a suspicious black car parked outside my apartment window. The next day, I found a note stuck to my car's window. "You're making a mistake, Alex." It was written in Jackson's handwriting. My heart pounded violently. Fear wrapped itself around me like chains. I started seeing Jackson's shadow everywhere. Outside the gym, near my apartment, even near my workplace, that same black car kept appearing. Jackson's obsession had mutated into something far more dangerous. Growing terror. When home becomes a prison. One day, I found an envelope in my mailbox. Inside was a photo of me from the first day I joined the gym, with a message scrawled on the back. "Look how weak you were, Alex. I made you, and now you're destroying it." This wasn't just a threat. It was a window into a diseased mind. I thought about going to the police. I gathered all the messages and notes. I talked to my friends, but they brushed it off, saying maybe I was overthinking, that this was just Jackson's joke. I even looked up online legal advice, but I quickly realized, without solid evidence, moving forward would be almost impossible. I felt like the legal process would only tangle me deeper. Jackson's tactics became more vicious. Strange activities started happening on my online accounts. I suspected Jackson had hacked into my phone and computer. My privacy was completely gone. I constantly felt like I was under surveillance. I couldn't sleep at night. I jumped at every tiny sound. One evening, I received a video clip on my phone. It showed my own living room. A tiny red light blinked in the corner. It was a security camera I had ordered online, but it had never arrived. In the video, Jackson himself appeared. He walked into my apartment and installed the camera. My eyes widened in pure horror. Jackson had broken into my home. He had installed cameras. He was watching me every second. My apartment had become my prison. Final confrontation, an unexpected freedom. One night, while I was asleep, I received a chilling message, a picture of me, taken while I was sleeping, and underneath it the word, "mine." I knew I couldn't take this anymore. If I gave in now, Jackson would never let me go. I had to break free. I had to destroy him, psychologically. I threw open all my doors and windows. I pulled back the curtains. I turned on every light. I stood in front of the mirror and I grabbed every high-calorie item, every junk food, every forbidden thing Jackson had banned, and I devoured them. Bite after bite, slice after slice. I ate furiously without stopping, tears burning in my eyes, but a strange, bitter freedom flooding my chest. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Jackson. His voice was seething, desperate, shattered. "What did you do, Alex? You've destroyed yourself. You've ruined all my hard work." He screamed, angry, broken, furious. I cut him off. "I'm no longer your perfect progress, Jackson," I whispered, my voice trembling but powerful. "I'm free." Silence. Long, heavy silence. I could hear his shaky breath. And then he hung up. Somehow, that seemed like his final message. Strangely, from that day forward, Jackson vanished. The messages stopped. The phone calls ended. The black car never appeared again. Days passed. Weeks turned into months. Jackson never contacted me again. It felt like seeing me destroy my own transformation broke his obsession. Or maybe he found a new project. I finally breathed. I had survived this nightmare, but life would never be the same. I still remained cautious, hyper-aware of every strange movement around me. I changed my phone number. I became extremely careful on social media. I upgraded the security of my home. I know I fought and won a psychological war, but I paid a heavy price. I stepped out from under the shadow of Jackson's perfect progress, and now I'm shaping myself on my own terms, no one else's.